Years, the winter of 1887. A log farmhouse in the Telemark Valley, Norway, outside -18 degrees. Inside, no one is adding wood. The man had built his fire that morning. He stacked the largest logs on the bottom of the firebox, medium pieces in the middle, small kindling and wood shavings on top. Then he lit it from the top. His neighbor watched through the window, shook his head. Who lights a fire from the top? The fire started slowly. Thin smoke looked like it was about to die, but it didn't. 3 hours later, the fire still burned steady. Not once had he added wood. 6 hours, 8 hours. The room stayed warm through the night. His neighbor lit his fire the usual way, small wood at the bottom lit from below. Had to add wood every 45 minutes. Years, had to wake up at 2 in the morning to keep the fire from dying, and still burn through more wood. This wasn't luck. This wasn't better wood. This was technique, passed down through Scandinavian craftsmen over hundreds of years, recorded in German blacksmith notebooks of the 18th century, taught to children before they were old enough to split wood themselves, and it disappeared from America in exactly 20 years, the 1950s through the 1970s, when propane became cheaper than firewood, and an entire culture of fire knowledge was erased in a single generation. The average American family burns 2 to 3 cords of firewood every winter. A Norwegian family with the same house size, the same outdoor temperature, 1.2 cords. That gap doesn't come from better wood. Years. It doesn't come from a more expensive stove. It comes from what the Telemark craftsman knew, and most of us have forgotten. In 2024, propane prices in the US rose 34% compared to 2020. 2.5 million American families use firewood as their primary heat source. Not for nostalgia, not for decoration, because it's the only thing they can afford, and most of them are burning wrong. Not a little wrong. Wrong in a way that wastes 30 to 40% of their heat every winter, without ever knowing it. This isn't a number I made up. Combustion engineers at the Norwegian University of Life Sciences measured it directly. They compared 2 burning methods, same wood, same moisture content, same stove. Years traditional method. Lit from the bottom, wood added continuously, Scandinavian method, stacked in reverse, lit from the top, no intervention. Results: carbon monoxide output down 60%, fine particulates in smoke down nearly half, creosote buildup in the chimney significantly lower, and actual heat delivered to the room from the same amount of wood measurably higher, less smoke, less ash, less creosote in your chimney. Creosote, the dark oily residue that forms inside chimneys from incompletely burned wood, is the direct cause of most wood stove-related house fires in America. The US Fire Administration estimates wood stoves cause more than 4,000 residential fires per year. Add fireplaces and chimneys, the number climbs above 14,000. Years total damage from all heating equipment, over $1.1 billion every year. According to NFPA, most of it preventable by burning better, but no one teaches this anymore. Chimney sweeps know, combustion engineers know, older people in rural Maine, Vermont, Minnesota, people who learned from their fathers, who learned from their grandfathers, they know. Everyone else? They learned from quick videos on the internet, from firewood packaging at the hardware store, from the manual that came with their stove written by lawyers, not craftsmen, and the result is a generation of firewood burners working twice as hard to get half the heat. 2.5 million families, an average of 2 cords of wasted firewood every year. Years at current prices. That's $600 to $700 going up the chimney every winter, every year. And nobody notices. So what's the problem? Most people think they already know the answer. They think it's the type of wood, and that is the first mistake. A mistake that people who have been burning wood for 40 years are still making every single day. Good wood. That's the answer most people give. Oak, hickory, ash, hardwood. Dense, heavy, long burning. That's what they look for. That's what they pay extra for, and that's why they think they're doing it right. Wrong. Not because hardwood is bad, but because wood species accounts for maybe 20% of the result. The other 80% comes from something else entirely. Scandinavian craftsmen burned pine. Years. They burned birch. They burned whatever the nearby forest offered, because Norwegian forests don't ask what species you prefer, and they still outperformed modern Americans burning seasoned oak, because they knew something the modern firewood buyer wood doesn't burn. Stop for a second with that. The log in your firebox, it doesn't actually burn. What burns is gas. The fire heats the wood releases gas, and those gases are what actually ignite. That's the actual combustion. Wood is just the container. Its job is to release gas at the right moment, at the right rate, at the right temperature. Wood species determines how much gas is inside. How you burn determines what percentage of that gas actually combusts. There's a log of oak burned the wrong way. You're wasting most of the energy inside it. A log of pine burned the right way, you're capturing nearly all of it. You don't need better hardwood, you're just burning it wrong. But there's a second mistake, and this one is more dangerous, because it comes from people who think they already understand. They know about moisture content, they know wood has to be dry, they buy a moisture meter, they wait a full year, sometimes two, before burning. They're doing it right, or at least that's what they think. The problem isn't that they didn't wait long enough. The problem is they stacked wrong from the beginning. A round log left unsplit, however long you wait, will never dry properly. Years the outer bark dries first, contracts and forms a barrier that traps moisture inside. You can see it if you look at the end grain, the outside cracks, but the inside is still dark and damp. 18th century German craftsmen knew this. They didn't wait for wood to dry before splitting. They split it while it was still green, still fresh, still heavy, still full of sap. Green wood splits nearly twice as easily as dry. The grain is still soft. The maul goes through with almost no resistance. Split it first, stack it right, then let the wind and time do the rest. Green split wood reaches burnable moisture content, below 20%, in around 6 months. The same log left as around 18 months, sometimes 2 years. That's the difference between burning this winter and burning next winter. But splitting at the right time is only half. The other half, how you stack, is something most people have never heard of, and it changes the entire winter. Now, I'm going to show you 3 things, not tips, not tricks, techniques with names, with mechanisms applicable this winter. First, top-down fire. Norwegians call it optenning ovenfra, burning from above. Sounds backwards, looks backwards, and it outperforms anything you've ever done with your stove. Here's how you stack it. Your largest, densest logs go on the bottom, parallel, tight together. Middle layer, medium-sized pieces, stacked perpendicular to the layer below. Above that, small splits. Years on top, wood shavings, rolled newspaper, the driest kindling you have, then light it from the top. The first time you see it, you'll think it's about to die. Small flame up top, thin smoke, looks weak, but that is exactly what you want to see. Here's why. When you burn from the bottom, the traditional way, the fire produces a large volume of unburned gas because the large logs above haven't gotten hot enough to release their gas properly. Those gases rise up the chimney unburned. You are literally burning money out into the open air. Top-down fire reverses that entirely. Heat from the kindling layer radiates downward. It preheats the logs below before the flame even reaches them. Years by the time the fire burns down to the large logs. They're already hot enough to release gas immediately and burn completely. No excess gas, no wasted fuel. The fire self-regulates for hours without you adding a single piece of wood. Second, the Scandinavian sizing rule. Craftsmen there had a simple rule. They measured firewood by forearm from elbow to wrist, about 12 to 14 inches. Not tradition, that's physics passed down by word of mouth through generations. A log over 6 inches in diameter, surface area too small relative to mass. The fire takes too long to heat the core. Gas releases slowly, unevenly, and doesn't burn completely. Split that same log into 4 or 5 thinner pieces. Surface area triples. Fire reaches every face simultaneously. Years gas releases faster, burns cleaner, more heat from the same amount of wood. Scandinavian craftsmen knew this by the 17th century, not because they studied physics, because winter punishes those who burn wrong. Third, Holzhausen, translated from German wood house, a simple name for a technique that Germans use to dry firewood twice as fast as conventional stacking, not in rows, in a circle. Drive a stake into the ground as a center point. Stack wood in a circle around it, end grain facing inward, bark facing out. Each layer tilts slightly inward so gravity holds the structure together. The center stays open or loosely filled with scraps. The result is a chimney made of firewood. Years, when the sun heats the dark interior of the circle, warm air rises through the center and exits the top. Cool air from outside is pulled in through the gaps between logs. This airflow runs continuously, no wind required, no cover needed. Holzhausen creates its own convection. 6 weeks with Holzhausen. 12 weeks with a traditional straight row. Same wood, same weather conditions, and when rain comes, the circle self-drains. No flat surface for water to pool on. The top logs are angled like roof tiles. Water runs off, rather than soaking in. This isn't folk art. This is thermodynamic engineering, developed by people for whom winter offered no forgiveness for mistakes. A Scandinavian winter doesn't reward the strongest. It rewards whoever burns most efficiently. Years, and now you have all three: top-down fire, the forearm sizing method, Holzhausen. But knowing the mechanism isn't enough. You need to see it work in numbers. I want you to picture a specific scene: Bavaria, southern Germany. Late October, not cold enough to freeze, but cold enough that breathing out makes a cloud. A man stands in the yard, alone. No machinery, no shelter, just a pile of freshly split wood and a stake driven into the ground. He begins stacking, not in rows, in a circle, one piece at a time, end grain facing in, bark facing out, each layer tilting slightly inward. The circle grows wider, taller. 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 1 hour. By late afternoon, the circle stands above his head, about 10 feet across, more than 6 feet tall. Years built by one person in 4 hours. No nails, no rope, nothing holding it together except gravity and the angle of the lean. And then the strangest thing: from the top of the circle, a thin wisp of steam begins to rise. Not smoke, no fire inside at all, just moisture pulling out of fresh wood, drawn upward by the convection the structure itself created. The Holzhausen is breathing. A neighbor walks past and glances over. Doesn't ask anything. They know what this is. They grew up watching their father build one, and their father had watched their grandfather do the same, going back at least 300 years. In places where winter gets cold enough, technique isn't a preference. It's what determines whether you sleep warm or not. Years, 6 weeks later, the wood inside that circle will be drier than any straight row stack in the valley, ready for winter. No waiting. This is the image I want you to hold for what comes next. Because the numbers coming up, they're not from a lab. They come from real winters, from real families, from people who had no choice but to get it right. Now the numbers. Researchers at the Norwegian University of Life Sciences ran a direct test: top-down fire versus the traditional method. Not in ideal conditions, in the real conditions of a country where burning wood is a matter of national survival. Same stove, same wood, same moisture content. Only one thing different: which direction you lit the fire results. Carbon monoxide output, down 60%. Years, fine particulates in smoke, down nearly half. Creosote in chimney, significantly lower. And actual heat delivered to the room from the same amount of wood, measurably higher, not by a little, not within margin of error, higher in the way engineers call statistically significant and regular people call "I can feel it." But a lab is not where winter happens. An independent research group in Scandinavia tracked 2 wood piles side by side through a full summer. Same species of freshly split birch, same volume, 1 cord each, same location, same weather. Pile 1, traditional straight rows, with a roof cover, ventilated on both ends. Pile 2, Holzhausen, no roof, no intervention. Years after 6 weeks, Holzhausen dried significantly faster. Many samples approaching burnable moisture content within 6 weeks. The covered straight rows were still far from that threshold. 6 more weeks needed to catch up. Same wood, same starting point. 6 weeks apart at the end. 6 weeks sounds small, but if you split in May expecting to burn in November with straight rows, you'll be burning wet wood through the first month of winter. With Holzhausen, you're done by September. That's the difference between a winter that starts right and a winter that starts with smoke and frustration. Now I want you to look at one last number, the one nobody in the propane industry wants you to think about. The average American family burns 2 to 3 cords every winter. Years at current prices. Around $350 a cord, that's $700 to over $1,000 a year. When top-down fire combines with proper split sizing, the heat extracted from the same pile increases measurably. Norwegian families applying all 3 techniques report using 30 to 40% less firewood to reach the same indoor temperature. 30 to 40% of $1,000, that's $300 to $400 every winter, without buying anything new, no new equipment, no more expensive stove, no special wood, just knowing how to stack, how to split, which direction to light. Norwegians aren't richer than you, their forests aren't better than yours, their winters are much colder. Years. The only difference, they didn't forget what their grandfathers knew. Winter doesn't care whether you believe in tradition or not. It only cares which house keeps the fire burning longest. And there's one more thing that grandfather knew. Something Americans are throwing in the trash every morning after the fire goes out, not knowing they're discarding one of the most useful things in the entire winter. Ash. That's what you're throwing away. Every morning after the fire goes out, modern Americans scoop ash into a metal bucket and take it outside, clean, tidy, and completely wasteful. German and Scandinavian craftsmen didn't do that. They kept the ash, not because they were poor, not because they had nowhere to dump it, but because they knew what hardwood ash is. Years. This is basic chemistry that European farmers have known since the 14th century. Hardwood ash, oak hickory ash, contains high concentrations of potassium and calcium, two of the most important nutrients for agricultural soil. Before synthetic fertilizers existed, wood ash was a genuinely valuable commodity. In the 18th and 19th centuries, an entire industry collected and processed wood ash into potash to sell to farmers and soap makers. People weighed it, bought it, traded it. You're throwing that in the trash. Spread a thin layer of ash on garden soil, especially acidic soil, and the pH rises. Tomatoes, beans, leafy greens all respond well. Blueberries and azaleas don't. They need acid soil, and ash will hurt them. Years, but for most standard vegetable gardens, wood ash is free fertilizer you're already producing every winter, and that's not the use German craftsmen valued most. German craftsmen used ash to clean their stove glass. Blackened stove glass is a problem in most firewood households. Modern people buy specialized cleaning spray, $5 to $15 a bottle. A German craftsman takes a damp cloth, dips it in fine ash, and wipes. The ash doesn't just scrub the carbon off, it helps break it down. Glass, clean cost, nothing, no streaks left behind. The same principle applies to cast iron pots, cast iron pans, cast iron stove accessories. Fine ash polishes metal surfaces without scratching. Europeans were doing this for centuries before the Brillo pad existed. Years. One important warning. Ash holds heat far longer than you'd think. Ash that looks completely cold can still have live coals buried inside, up to 48 hours after the fire goes out. Plastic containers catching fire from cold ash is the cause of numerous real house fires. Metal container with a lid, at least 10 feet from the house. Wait at least 2 full days before using. That's the rule, no exceptions. But once you do it right, ash becomes something you start saving intentionally, not because you have to, because you understand its real value. People of the past wasted nothing from the fire. Wood for heat, ash for soil, for cleaning, for protection. A culture that understands fire does not discard what remains of it. Back to the man in Telemark. Years. Winter, 1887. He lit his fire once in the morning, didn't add wood all day. The room stayed warm through the night. His neighbor thought he was lucky, or strange, or both. He wasn't lucky. He just knew something the neighbor didn't. 3 techniques: top-down fire, proper split sizing, Holzhausen, plus one thing modern people call trash and craftsmen called a resource. None of those were invented by a genius. None of them need a patent. None of them require capital investment. They were developed by ordinary people in real winters, where a mistake wasn't an inconvenience but hunger and cold. That's why they work, not because someone in a lab optimized the process, but because hundreds of years of winters continuously removed what didn't work and kept what did. Years. That is a more rigorous test than any peer review. And then propane arrived. Cheap, convenient, nothing to learn. Within one generation, the entire body of knowledge accumulated over centuries disappeared from mainstream American culture. No one ordered it, erased. It just stopped being passed down. Now propane costs more, firewood costs more, and most people burning wood are operating with a third of the knowledge that a Norwegian craftsman in the 19th century had by age 15. I want to know, are you using a wood stove or a fireplace? And have you ever tried top-down fire? Leave it in the comments. I read everyone. This isn't knowledge I invented. This is knowledge that was once passed from person to person, winter to winter, until it was interrupted. Years. This channel exists to reconnect that break. If this video was useful, not because I'm asking you to subscribe, but because there's more like this waiting to be told about Roman concrete. About how the Middle East kept things cold without electricity, about things our ancestors knew and we've forgotten.